On January 1st, 1991, the Soviet Union was the largest country in the world. Its population numbered more than 290 million and 100 distinct nationalities lived within its borders. It also boasted an arsenal of tens of thousands of nuclear weapons, and with its sphere of influence was a mighty global superpower which rivaled the United States in political, military, and economic strength. So, how did a strife ridden society in the 1900s, torn between the ruling and the working class, emerge to become a formidable superpower? Well, here is the story.
The Soviet Union, officially the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was a socialist state in Eurasia that existed from 1922 to 1991. It had its root in the October Revolution of 1917, when the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, overthrew the Russian provisional government that had replaced Tsar Nicholas II, and four socialist republics were subsequently established. What was the impact? In 1917, the world saw the biggest change in the social, political, and economic system of Russia. The rise of the Russian Socialist Federative Soviet Republic, Russian SFSR, led to the Russian Civil War between the Revolutionary Reds and the Counter Revolutionary Whites. The Red Army entered several territories of the former Russian Empire and helped local communists take power through workers' councils called Soviets, which nominally acted on behalf of workers and peasants. The success of the October Revolution not just transformed the Russian state into a Soviet republic but affected large parts of Eastern Europe.
The economic impact of the October Revolution. World War I had placed the people of Russia in a position where there was a major scarcity of resources, widespread famine, and collapse in economy. Nonetheless, Vladimir Lenin was confident in the economic revival of the Soviet Union. In 1917, 4 days after the October Revolution, Lenin incorporated the 8-hour working day, which dramatically improved the working condition of Russia's population. However, the Bolsheviks were completely against the private property. The government took over ownership and management. This led to nationalization of most industries and banks. Land was declared social property, and peasants were allowed to seize the land of the rich and noble. Bolsheviks enforced the partition of large houses according to family requirement. Trade unions were kept under the party control.
The social impact of the October Revolution had far reaching consequences. To begin with, new uniforms were designed for the army and officials following a clothing competition organized in 1918. This was a time when the well known Soviet hat Budanovka was chosen. Many young writers and artists rallied to the party because it stood for socialism and change. After October 1917, this led to experiments in the arts and architecture. However, many became disillusioned because of the censorship the party encouraged. Local Soviets continued to defy the Bolsheviks but to no avail. Democracy received little nurturing and was never institutionalized. Politics remained personalized. The cult of the strong leader gradually emerged, with local Lenins cropping up throughout the land. The Cheka, a forerunner of the notorious KGB, was introduced. The Bolshevik secret police, who hunted down and arrested anyone who was suspected of hostility towards the Bolsheviks. By the end of the Civil War, they had executed over 100,000 political opponents. This was known as the Red Terror.
Last but not the least, the political impact. October symbolized and Bolshevik triumph. What this also meant was that any hope for a liberal democratic order was now impossible. Later in November 1917, an agreement degree of peace was reached with the left wings. SRs and peace navigations were conducted with the Germans. As far as the Bolsheviks were concerned, the revolution was over. As far as Lenin was concerned, he was in power. The Russian states, however, won in the states of decomposition. Numerous Bolsheviks began to speak for elections for an constitute assembly. Lenin had no use for an parliament, regardless for whether it was elected democratically or not. But now, immediately after October Revolution, Lenin was compelled to hold elections. On November 25th, 1917, the Russian people held the first free elections in the nation's nation after 900 years. When the vote was over, the Bolsheviks had only received one quarter of the vote. The other socialist parties, mainly the SRs, polled 62% of the vote. The Bolsheviks were engaged in militant drive to Bolshevize the population. In 1918, the party was renamed the Russian Communist Party, and the years that followed, the Bolsheviks became the only party to participate in the elections to all Russian Congress of Soviets, which became the only parliament in the country. This finally resulted in Russia becoming an one party state. Now I would like to hand over it to Bhavishya to give the further information.
The Russian Civil War began with growing resistance to the Bolshevik regime that seized control of Russia in October 1917. In immediate aftermath, the October coup and the Bolsheviks faced microcosm the foes they would eventually confront in much larger numbers. When the Bolsheviks ordered the land distribution, the Russian army began to break up. Soldiers, mostly peasants, wished to go home for redistribution. Non Bolshevik socialists, liberals, and supporters of autocracy were fed up with the government and condemned the Bolshevik uprising. Their leaders moved to south of Russia and organized troops to fight the Bolsheviks. As these troops fought against the Bolsheviks in a civil war, looting, banditry, and famine became common. Once the civil war began, the Bolsheviks banned all political parties and arrested the leaders. They also closed down newspapers that opposed them. War communism was introduced to help supply the war effort. In May 1918, a food dictatorship was established where the Bolshevik requisitioned grains from the peasants.
So, who had fought the Civil War? There were three main armies that fought in the Civil War. The largest component groups were the Red Army, fighting for the Bolshevik form of socialism, the loosely allied forces known as the White Army or the Prosarinists, and the Greens or the Socialist Revolutionaries. The Bolsheviks were extremely fortunate in the quality of their leadership, particularly in Lenin's and Trotsky. Throughout the Civil War, Lenin provided the energy and drive needed to inspire success, while the Trotsky provided the organization and the charisma. The Whites had been backing from the Great Britain, France, the US, and Japan, while the Reds possessed international support, which proved much more effective. However, the Whites had a number of weaknesses that led to their defeat. Divided leadership, lacking a single figurehead like Lenin's, different generals had conflicting aims. Whites became hated and feared for the brutality they showed towards local areas, stealing crops and livestock, torturing objecting civilians. Their lack of a clean aim or plan were less enticing than the Bolshevik cause, the establishment and survival of the revolution and a communist Russia.
By the end of the Civil War in 1921, the Bolsheviks had succeeded in securing their grip on power in Russia. The casualties during the war was an estimated 7 to 12 million. The Russian Civil War was the greatest national catastrophe that Europe had yet seen. Cooperation with non-Russian nationalities and Muslim Jihadists helped the Bolsheviks succeed. However, cooperation did not work where Russian colonists themselves turned Bolshevik. In Khiva, in Central Asia, Bolshevik colonists brutally massacred local nationalists in the name of defending socialism. As a result, the Bolsheviks became unpopular amongst their own people. They were confused about what the Bolshevik government represented. To stop such massacres and ideologies in the society, most non Russian nationalities were given political autonomy in the country. Finally, on December 29, 1922, a conference of officiating delegations from the Russian SFSR, the Transcaucasian SFSR, the Ukrainian SSR, and the Byelorussian SSR approved the Treaty on the Creation of the USSR, forming the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. On February 1, 1924, the USSR was recognized by the British Empire. The same year, a Soviet constitution was approved, legitimizing the December 1922 Union. And thus, the groundwork was laid for the rise of a superpower, USSR, with a well established political system, a central command economy diametrically opposed to the market liberalism of Western nations. USSR saw rapid economic development in the middle decades of the century, which helped it soar as a robust economic, political, and military power. So, how did such a mighty union collapse? Well, that is a story for another day. Thank you.